The Squatter, written by Jonathan Dunne, read by the author. Chapter 1. Just a few weeks before it happened on live television, Molly Greene was writing the short and not-so-sweet sign on the back of an ill-omened menu, which had been especially drawn up for tonight's New Year's Eve bill of fare. That's how sudden all of this had come tumbling down. Her financial advisor had called her earlier this evening, warning her of the implications of keeping the restaurant open just one more night. Molly had chosen the last night of the year, tonight, as make-or-break night. It turned out to be break night. Molly dabbed her teary eyes and face, then slammed the napkin onto the table in disgust. It looked back up at her with two ominous, grim mascara smudges for eyes and a turned-down lipstick streak for a smile. Molly huffed a weary chuckle through her tears. Me, myself, and I. The profound silence in the dim light of the defunct restaurant hit her for the first time as she sat there alone. There was a time when this place was alive with the buzz of chatter, cutlery, and the occasional crash of a plate, which was always a good sign. Busy waiters dropped plates. The Michelin star restaurant was a cold shadow of its former self, empty and in darkness, save for the light filtering in from the street outside. Molly was seated at her favourite table. On any other night, she'd be sitting at this same table, closest to the cash register, tallying up her generous takings, but not tonight. She'd been stood up, not by Mike. That would be impossible. He was gone almost 3 years. But by her government and its absurd red tape. And what about this curfew? Wow, how ridiculous is that? All these thoughts, along with darker visions, flitted through the synopsis of Molly Greene's brain as she wrote the note on the back of the fancy menu, while heaving doleful sobs of remorse and regret. It wasn't only that she was forced to close her prestigious restaurant doors, but there was something else she just couldn't face right now. Something that cut deep. Just then, it seemed anyone who had ever mattered had abandoned her wholesale. And the closing of her Michelin star restaurant? Why, that was just the poison cherry on this delicious cake of shit, of course. What's wrong, Mummy? Why are you crying? Molly flinched and squeezed her eyes shut in a vain attempt to stop the beautiful voice in her head. It was funny how she never saw her little boy like she saw Mike, yet Mike never spoke whereas Henry did. Well, that's not technically true either. Mike did speak, but when his lips moved, he spoke in Molly's voice of reason. Henry always walked right into her head without knocking first. And his little voice always came when Molly was at her lowest, just to kick her while she was down. The only way she could drown out his voice was to drown herself, in alcohol preferably, so she took a heady gulp of wine from the glass at her table. She added the full stop to the end of the sign, feeling like the full stop had also just succinctly ended Molly's brief, forgettable role on this planet. She stared long and hard into her deep glass of red wine, compliments of the house. They say answers can't be found at the bottom of a wine glass, but the wine sure can block out those unending questions. To stem another bout of tears, she knocked her drink back in one gulp. The intoxicating heat of the distilled grape juice rose up her chest and neck. What a glorious way to finish 2020. 2018 had been dedicated to grieving and trying to get over the car accident. 2019 had been dedicated to pretending she was getting over the car accident. And 2021? Who knew what lay in store? Molly went in around the counter and picked up a second bottle of Bordeaux Vintage 81. One last perk of the job. Someone has to drink it. She went to pour herself another goblet to drown her sorrows, but instead she tried to drown herself by pouring the contents of the bottle over her head. Some of the alcohol managing to go down her gullet, but mostly gushing down her blouse and collecting in her soggy bra. Molly Greene looked as if she'd just been stabbed, and in a lot of ways she had. In the background, Bing Crosby was dreaming about a white Christmas, but that's all Bing was doing, dreaming, in a simmering world where pollution was putting snow into a snow in a can. Molly Greene too was dreaming about what could have been. Drenched, she raised her empty wine bottle joylessly, toasted nothing to nobody, before drunkenly crooning, "I've been dreaming of a shite Christmas." "What's wrong, Mummy?" Molly snapped her head around, expecting to see her little boy standing there amongst the tables and chairs. "Henry," she slurred, "what did I tell you about sneaking up on people, Her thoughts then turned to her deceased husband, as they so often do in times like this. "Mike, oh Mike, what am I going to do, hon?" Mike was still nowhere and everywhere. She tried to imagine what her late husband would say in his voice, but she couldn't remember his voice. Then again, would Mike offer his wife advice after what happened back in 2018? Would he bear a grudge? Probably not. And that's what made it even worse. She pulled on her coat over her wine-sodden clothes and collected her things. She then sellotaped the reversed menu onto the door, announcing, "Permanently closed. Thank you to all our wonderful customers for making this dream come true. Thank you to our wonderful government for shooting down that dream." She locked the door behind her for the last time, sullenly muttering, "Sorry, Mike. Sorry, Henry." Not only had she left herself down, but she had let them down as well. After all, if it hadn't been for the life insurance money, how else would she have opened a Michelin star restaurant? Without looking back, Molly staggered across Halpin Street. She took her car fob from her handbag, beeped the BMW open, and sat in. Only now did it hit her how drunk she was, when she could hardly remember where the ignition button was. Jesus Christ, how could she be even doing this, after everything she'd been through, after everything she'd put her family through, and that was really saying something. And now here she was, a no-good drunk on New Year's Eve. She slammed the steering wheel before getting out and banging the door behind her, which landed her on her ass on the street. With zero dignity, she picked herself up and locked the car behind her. The number 9 bus would come by in just a few minutes. Unfortunately, this wasn't the first time Molly Greene had opted for public transport. Too liquored up to drive. As she sat at the bus stop on that freezing night, cold and miserable, just wanting to get home to hold her 3 girls, Molly made a drunken promise to herself. Would she even remember it in the morning? It didn't matter. It's a thought that counts. Molly promised herself that 2021 would be a year of change. The bus pulled in. Molly swayed to her feet and fell onto the bus. Yes, 2021 would be a year of change. Just how much change, Molly wasn't to know. Perhaps she wasn't meant to know. Chapter 2. The following Friday morning, New Year's Day, Molly Greene woke to the pointed tip of a mawkish dagger of a hangover held to her temples. Deciding she wasn't mentally ready to face the new year, Molly lulled herself back into a light sleep, and "Happy New Year, Mommy," boomed Emma's voice. "Oh, and you too." Molly tried to muster up a little enthusiasm as her 4-year-old launched herself across the room and crash-landed in her mom's bed. The child flinched as a waft of stale, alcoholic breath came from her mom's mouth. "Your breath stinks, Mommy. Blech." Jesus, talk about out of the mouths of babes. Molly felt low, so low, her breath must be rank. A cold nausea bubbled inside Molly. She was going to puke in front of her child. Molly leaned over the edge of the bed, gagging, but seeing her bloody blouse and bra strewn on the floor, along with everything else she'd left in a pile, was such a shock the empty retching stopped. It was only then she recalled how she had taken an impromptu wine shower, trying to drown herself in her own unsold vintage red. "Oh, fuck," she muttered. "Fuck, fuck, fuck." Jesus Christ, everything had become an excuse to drink. Good news, yes, let's celebrate. Why not? Chin chin. Bad news? Boo-hoo, let's drown our sorrows. Why not? Chin chin. She donned her first brave mask for the day. "Did you have fun with your sisters and Janice last night?" The child giggled. "We played hide and seek. Cora hid behind the curtain in the living room, but just her head. She thought we couldn't see her. Then we had a disco, and I was in charge of the cloakroom and finger food." Molly couldn't help but laugh. "Wow, sounds great. Where are your sisters?" "Asleep." "And Janice?" "She's asleep too. Louie's awake, though." Molly was about to snicker again, but the build-up of pressure brought on an instant migraine. "Oh, so the babysitter is asleep, but the cockatoo is awake?" Emma nodded matter-of-factly. "Uh-huh." Molly smiled and hugged her youngest daughter. She often wondered if Emma's twin brother would have been anything like Emma in character. They were twins, so he would have that same owlish look around now. Molly had created an imaginary composite of his face. Her instinct told her Henry wouldn't have been anything like his twin sister. Emma's big character made up for the loss of her twin, Molly liked to think. Maybe she was fooling herself. They rested in Molly's bed for another half hour. Molly tried to savour the moment, but as she caressed her daughter's silky blonde hair, she wondered what the fuck she was going to do with the rest of her life, and it was still only January 1st. A knock on her bedroom door broke her from her stream of desperation. "It's open." Janice popped her head around the door. "Happy New Year!" Molly put on another brave face, one of many masks she wore daily. "Happy New Year, Jan." She struggled to find any enthusiasm, sinking into her drawn apathy. "Were the girls good for you?" Janice smiled at Emma. "They're always good for me." Emma smiled contentedly and snuggled up to her mom. "Thanks, Jan. When are you going to start accepting payment from me? It's unfair to rely on you every time I have to work." "That's okay, because there is no work anymore." Psst, Janice waved away Molly's suggestion. "I told you I love spending time with the girls. Anyway, you already pay me to be a waitress. Coffee?" "Shit." "Sorry? Do you want coffee?" "Oh, that would be heaven. Strong, Jan. Make it black." She answered in resigned tones. "I've got some news," she added hesitantly. Janice nodded, then flashed a concerned look at the bundle of smelly clothes on the floor by the bed. "I don't like that word, news." She kept staring at the pile of crimson crumpled clothes. "It's not blood before you ask." Janice smiled wanly. "I wasn't going to ask." This answer unnerved Molly, as if Janice wasn't counting on anything anymore. "Breakfast?" Janice asked Emma. "How about those chocolate monster thingies?" "Yummy!" rejoiced Emma, leaping out of the bed and going downstairs with Janice. Molly lay there for a moment, appreciating the good friend she'd found in Janice, who had become a shoulder to cry and lean on. Janice lived just down the street, but after the accident she had practically become a live-in nanny at the Greenes' place. Molly had initially hired Janice to be a waitress at the restaurant, but she'd become so much more. Janice wasn't working last night, and Molly would have to deliver the bad news this morning. Still not ready to face the day, she hauled herself out of bed, picked up her stinking pile of clothes, then dumped them directly into the washing machine in the utility room. She showered and cleaned herself up, donned a little masking makeup while thinking about the Beatles, Eleanor Rigby, and how she kept her face in a jar by the door. Downstairs, Molly met her other two daughters, Mina and Cora. They were in their pyjamas, curled up on the sofa, playing Minecraft. "Happy New Year!" Molly smiled a rictus grin. It didn't matter, though. All she got back was a droning, "Happy New Year," because the girls were too engrossed in mining gemstones and adding extensions to their virtual pads. Louis the cockatoo, however, gave Molly a wondrous morning greeting, with his daily "Allo, allo, allo," from his perch in his spacious cage in the corner of the kitchen, raising his golden crest like a folding and unfolding Spanish abanico. The Greenes had adopted the bird a month or so after the accident being zero in Molly's life, clearly divided into two halves. One night Janice and Molly had a harmless drunken giggle when Janice suggested that a cockatoo had replaced Mike. Molly saw the funny side of it, but she was struggling. Janice shoved a steaming mug of coffee in front of Molly. "There, drink that. I'll join you, but then I must be off. Things to do, you know yourself." Jan, we need to talk." Janice stiffened as she sipped her coffee. "Oh? I've been putting it off for a few weeks, months probably, but the latest lockdown is the final nail in the coffin, my coffin." Janice put her mug down and sighed. "I was waiting for this. The restaurant, right?" Molly nodded. "My financial advisor told me one more night of losses would shut the place. I thought by getting Pedro being Molly's Michelin star chef, to draw up a special New Year's Eve menu might draw the punters. But the government has scuppered my plans with their absurd rules and regulations. Special menus need special ingredients. I had to shut the place down immediately to cut my losses. I have no choice but to close Molly's. This pandemic has been detrimental for the hostelry business. She swore into her mug of coffee. Just when we were really starting to take off. Christ, I'm so sorry, Jan. As an afterthought, she meekly added, I'm going to start paying you for your babysitting services. Maybe it'll go some way to making up for your waitress wages. Don't be silly. I love the girls. They're my friends. Tears came down Molly's eyes. You'd be a better mom than I ever will be. Well, now you're being silly. What Janice didn't know, what nobody would ever know, was that little Henry would be with them here on New Year's Day right now, if Molly hadn't fucked up on a grand scale. Molly Greene was taking that secret to her grave. Mike and Henry had already taken the same secret to theirs. Janice racked her brain for ways in which Molly could keep the restaurant on standby, but Molly shot down every proposal. Janice finally suggested crowdfunding on Patreon, and Molly responded by snorting laughter into her mug. So what's your plan? Molly shook her head despondently. I'm not sure, but I do know this. I need to find a job to keep this roof over our heads. This mortgage is going to cripple me. Or sell up. That's another option. She paused. Thank Christ I was renting the restaurant premises. I had plans to buy it, you know. Touch wood I didn't. Molly tapped the leg of the table. I've got some savings to tide me over. She looked around the kitchen, wishing Mike would saunter through the kitchen door to help her. She could see them both right now waltzing around the kitchen to Eugene Doga's haunting gramophone. As she watched that lovely couple dance around the kitchen island, she said absently, I think I want to sell up. You do? Molly nodded. This place is full of ghosts. Janice saw her friend was speaking to her from a far-off place. Well, it just so happens that I know a couple looking for a house in this neighbourhood. I'll let them know, shall I? Yeah, why not? Janice wasn't convinced Molly had even heard her. You sure? I don't want to tell these people your house is on sale only for you to change your mind. Molly considered her friend. The more I think about it, the more sure I am. She paused before opining. This could be a sign, Janice. She gazed into her mug of black coffee. This isn't working. I need hair of the dog right now. Janice wasn't as fast to grab the half bottle of wine on the counter as she had been with Molly's coffee. You won't find answers at the bottom of a glass. Who said anything about a glass? Asked Molly as she got up from the table and proceeded to chug from the bottle. She wiped wine from her lips, casting a sidelong glance across the kitchen just to make sure the waltzing couple was still there. They weren't. They were never there when Molly was drinking. Janice stayed quiet for a moment, determined not to say anything, staring off into space, but she just couldn't hold it in any longer. It was the 1st of January, and better to start the year off on the right foot, even if that meant hobbling at the beginning. That's your problem right there, snapped Janice. I promised myself I wouldn't mention it, but someone has to say something, Moll. You've got a drinking problem. Janice's outburst shocked Molly. She drew up in defence. No, I don't. Look. She made a point of finishing the bottle of wine, then slamming it onto the counter so hard that Emma, who had been completely engrossed in her chocolate monster thingy cereal, startled, sending the contents of her spoon up her nose and down her pyjama top. She gawped at her mum as her bottom lip curled downwards, not knowing whether to cry or not. Molly apologised, running for a towel to wipe her down. Oh, I'm sorry, baby. She kissed her head. Janice wasn't done yet. I'm giving you a friendly warning. Make 2021 the getting your shit together year. Janice shut her mouth, but just couldn't keep in the rest of the words screaming to get out. And you know something else, Moll? You're going to tell me anyway, Molly back answered as she wiped down Emma's pyjamas. I'm glad the business folded. I'm actually happy for you. And what the does that mean? The restaurant was dragging you down. This was the last thing Molly thought Janice would say. Janice, we were in the newspapers. Food critics loved our food. We were making good money. Yes, true, but at a price you would never be able to pay back. Molly took umbrage at her remarks. Look, I've got a bastard of a hangover, Jan. No mind games, please. Christ! Janice stared her friend down with a cutting glare. Seeing her best friend's ignorance, worse again, denial, only added fuel to the fire. How could you be so oblivious, Molly? By now, Cora and Mina were beginning to shoot surreptitious glances over the back of the sofa in the living room towards the kitchen. The restaurant was turning you into an alcoholic. has turned you into an alcoholic. You were drinking more wine than your guests were. She flashed air commas. A little tipple here and a little tipple there. You ended up drinking the cooking sherry. You could have been crepe flambé if someone held a match up to you. Molly felt the tremble of laughter coming on, but swallowed it. We were concerned for you, Moll. You know, we were going to stage an intervention. Molly's brain wasn't able to keep up with these vicious pearls of revelation. We? Intervention? Who was we? Us. The staff. Even your precious Michelin star chef Pedro was in on our little secret. Every minute you turned your back to have a little tipple, we were devising a plan on how to intervene. We know what you've been through, and it's a delicate subject, but Christ, someone had to do something. I think you would have lost the business without any lockdown. Every pandemic has a silver lining. Jesus, what's wrong with everyone? Cried 15-year-old Mina, eyes stuck on the TV screen. Nothing, love, Molly assured her. We're just talking. Cora rebutted with her familiar dry wit. Thank God we all don't talk like that. Molly told her girls to go back to their mining and killing sheep or whatever it was they were doing. And I know you're not going to want to hear this, continued Janice, who was on fire. But when, she lowered her voice, was the last time you sat down with them, gesturing to the girls, and asked them how their day was? They grow up so fast, Molly. You're going to miss out on their childhoods, and Mom needs to be there. Molly turned venomous. Don't you dare. You just waltz in here every now and again and think you can judge? We can take up this convo again when you're a mom and you see the reality. She regretted it the very moment the toxic words left her lips. Janice couldn't have kids of her own. I'm sorry, that wasn't called for. Janice acknowledged her apology. I'm sorry too. I crossed the line, but I still think you need to face whatever it is you're running from, Molly. I love you to bits, you know that, but you need to get this out of your system once and for all. Leave it back in fucking 2020. Mommy? Emma interrupted, pointing boldly at Janice. Janice said fucking. The 4-year-old made air commas around the swear word, which made them laugh, especially because Emma had been using air commas around everything recently. Yes, I know, Emma, but you don't need to repeat it. Janice apologised to the child. I'm sorry, you're right, Em. Janice slapped the back of her hand, and Emma giggled, which helped the anger in the kitchen dissipate. Emma left the table and galloped off towards the living room, leaving the two women in silence at the kitchen table. Jan, I've decided. I'm going to sell up. It's not too late to save this year. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Financial and mental reasons are why I should no longer be in this house, going to kill all kinds of birds. She called across at Louis. So watch yourself. The cockatoo squawked back at her, and they shared a cautious laugh. In that moment of weakness, Molly wanted to tell her friend she was feeling doubly sad and regretful about the closing of the business because she had opened Molly's with the payout she had received from her husband's life insurance policy. Not only had Molly opened her dream restaurant with blood money, but she'd been integral in the shedding of that blood. Molly Greene had let Mike down twice, once in life and now in death. But what she really wanted to tell her best friend was how little Henry just kept on waltzing in without being invited. Of course, it was a figment of her imagination, but her dead child always managed to pop up when least expected, and she was a nervous wreck because of it. She had never gotten over the car accident, but Molly refused to allow her grief to metastasize into a downward spiral of depression. The restaurant, funnily enough, had kept her afloat. Finally, Janice pointed at the empty wine bottle on the counter. Promise me you'll make that your last drink. It's still not too late to make your New Year's resolution. Not waiting for Molly to promise it would be her last drink, Janice knocked back the dregs of her coffee and got up. Now, she said merrily, I'm glad we've had this little heart-to-heart. I'll love you and leave you. I've got an empty fridge that needs to be filled, blah-de-blah-blah. Janice collected her things, made a curt goodbye to the girls, then kissed Molly's head on the way out. Sorry for the tough love, she whispered. Outside the front door, Janice burst into lamenting tears. An overwhelming sense of loss consumed her for no apparent reason. That afternoon, the Greenes went for a brisk walk along Sandy Cove Beach on the Dublin coastline, just to blow away the cobwebs of 2020 and to take in a lungful of fresh air for the coming 2021. The icy wind cut through them, but they were together. Molly looked at her girls, really looked at them for the first time in what seemed like a lifetime, as they danced, cartwheeled and giggled. After all they'd been through, they deserved a good mom, but Molly didn't deserve them. It was odd, but even though the Greenes' livelihood had been shut down, Molly was experiencing a deep and great sense of freedom on Sandy Cove Beach that Friday afternoon, a catharsis as the waves rolled in and out. Thinking about the near future was daunting, yet there was an overriding sense of galloping into the unknown, an electric adventure that carried some sense of hope. Her heated chat with Janice had done her the world of good. Janice always said that one could change their whole life in the blink of an eye just by adopting a positive attitude. That had sounded like self-help bullshit to Molly, who never needed any help. But as she gazed out to sea on this frigid and gloomy New Year's Day, she realised Janice was right. The crashing waves entranced Molly. She thought about a lot of things while Cora and Emma laughed their heads off and happily dragged seaweed along the shore while Mina scrawled their initials in the sand. MG, CG, EG, MG. But Molly's dreamy smile faltered as she realised two names were missing. Another MG and HG. The rushing tide came in over their initials. When the current went back out, it was as if the Greene family, what's left of it, had never existed. Chapter 3. Molly Greene popped the homemade lasagna dinner into the oven around 6 o'clock that Friday evening. Emma and Cora were in the living room. Molly wasn't sure what they were up to, but she could hear them laughing, and that was good enough for her. Mina was upstairs in her bedroom, where she spent most of her time these days, chatting with friends online. With the pandemic restrictions, face-to-face contact was becoming less and less a reality, and the reality was becoming virtual. Molly had always hated social media. The amount of time her daughter wasted on the phone, gawping at yawning pigs on TikTok, annoyed her no end. While the lasagna baked and the girls were doing their own thing, Molly decided it was time to fetch the plastic folder from the wardrobe upstairs. It was something she had been putting off. She laid all her affairs out on the kitchen table in front of her, work contracts, policies, insurances, and the house mortgage. She quickly concluded she could make a clean break if, and it was a big if, she could sell her house. The sale of the house plus her own savings would set them up in another life, until she found other work. As she sat there looking over the paperwork, that first niggle of languid fear bristled inside Molly. No matter what she added, multiplied, subtracted, or divided, the same answer always came up. The numbers told her she had to move, considering the high cost of living in the capital, and nobody was hiring in the hostelry sector now. By the time the lasagna was ready to be served, Molly Greene knew what she had to do. There wouldn't be anywhere open until Monday, but she needed to feel she was moving forward, and secretly afraid she'd only talk herself out of it if she actually stopped to think. She quickly Googled real estate agencies in her area and called the first one on the list. Her call went directly to the agency's voice message service. She quickly gave the agency her contact details and told them she wanted to put her house on the market. She felt the compulsion to explain why she was selling up, but she hung up before making an ass of herself. Molly tended not to know when to stop talking when leaving a voice message. Good, she clapped imaginary dust off the palms of her hands, as she felt more weight lift from her shoulders. She didn't get that sinking feeling of regret once she put the phone down. The trickle of fear she'd experienced moments ago had been replaced by exhilaration. Happy that things were moving forward, Molly called the girls for dinner. Only 5 minutes into dinner, Molly's phone buzzed on the table. Mina snapped. "Don't answer it." Molly flashed an "I'm the mom in this house" smile of condescension at her eldest daughter. "Hi, Janice." "Hey," Mina complained. "Why are you allowed to use the phone at the dinner table and I'm not?" Molly gestured her daughter to shut up and eat up. The 15-year-old was about to continue her little protest, but the words dried up in her mouth as her mom dropped her fork of lasagna in a mild state of shock. All eyes were on Molly now. "You can't be serious," Molly asked. "When?" More unheard words as Molly's face continued to beam even brighter. Her smile was infectious and rubbed off on the girls. They all began to smile at each other, not knowing why they were smiling. Molly continued, "What? No, I'm not going to change my mind. This is another sign." Molly peeped at the girls with a twinkle in her eye. Molly thanked Janice and hung up. Her amazement was palpable. She stared at her phone for a few seconds in stunned amazement. "I've just sold the house." Cora, thinking she was missing something, turned to her elder sister for her reaction. Mina seemed as confused as Cora was. Emma turned back to the job of separating her lasagna into layers. "Hello? Did anyone just hear what I said?" Cora answered. "This is a joke, right?" Mina snapped. "Mom, tell us this is a joke, please. I'm starting to sweat over here." It was about now when Molly realized she'd fucked up. She should have told the girls. They had every right to know about her drastic plan to sell up. She had run with the idea and never bothered considering how they might feel. "It's not a joke," Cora protested. "But we have all our friends here." "But you can make friends anywhere," Molly answered, feeling disingenuous. Mina, visibly shaken, chimed in. "You're wrong, Mom. Just because we're kids you think our friendships aren't as important as adult friendships? We can pick up friends as we go along and drop them as if they never meant anything to us? Wrong. I think you need to sit down and have a little drink." She regretted saying it before the words left her lips. She wasn't brave enough and too proud to say sorry, but Molly knew Mina regretted her words just by her awkward body language. "I think you need to sit down and have a little respect for your mother," Molly back-answered. This wasn't going the way she had envisioned. "Look, I admit I made a mistake in not telling you about my plans, but I need you to think of me for once in your lives. This is very exciting. You just don't know it yet." "Oh, could you get more Cora prompted her older sister. "Condescending?" Molly cleared her throat. "Now that we're all here, I suppose it's better if I tell you," Cora sarcastically muttered. "Better late than never," under her breath. "I'm closing the restaurant. Rather, the government is closing my restaurant." Mina looked around with a suspicious air. "What do you mean?" "The government restrictions have been crippling our business, and we had to shut our doors last night." Molly shook her head in disbelief, hearing herself say those words. "Girls, we're going on an adventure." Cora's eyes widened in hope. "An adventure? What kind of adventure?" Mina was more skeptical. "Maybe we're going to begin a new life somewhere else." "Well, there's no maybe. We are going to begin a new life somewhere else." Mina was having none of it. "Count me out. I've got Sophia's virtual birthday party Wednesday evening." Mina got up from the table. "I've lost my appetite." "Sit down. We need to talk." Mina did as she was asked, but not without voicing her opinion. "You need to talk, but you don't listen." Cora was now on the fence about this mysterious adventure. "Where are we going, exactly?" "I don't know," answered Molly, "and that's why it's an adventure. But I know we need to get out of this house." "We could move down the street. That way we still have our friends." Molly sighed, realizing the battle she had in her hands. "Mina, I don't think you're getting the point." "Explain it then." "I need to get away from this house. Too many memories. It's too painful." She took a deep breath and let it out. "I can't let go of your dad and brother." Molly refrained from telling her girls how she heard Henry every now and again and saw Mike. The sisters exchanged glances and lowered their heads in tacit agreement. "I can see more clearly now that I don't have a business anymore. I see I've been missing out on you guys. This is a sign." "You keep saying that, but signs are what you make of them." Mina's wisdom impressed Molly. Cora looked about the kitchen as if she was seeing it for the first time. "But this is our home." For this to work, Molly needed Mina on board. She needed to put this in terms her eldest daughter would understand. "Mina, you're right. I don't listen. But I need to be the mom and think about what my family needs. And right now, we're up shit creek without a paddle. I'm not working anymore, and we cannot afford to live in this house, in this city." "What's a shit creek?" asked Cora. Mina glared at her younger sister. "It's a torrent of shit, Cora, you don't want to be caught in. Kind of like what we're in now. And before you go asking, a paddle is a..." Cora barked back. "I know what a paddle is. I'm not stupid." Oh no, you look stupid. At this juncture, Emma burst out in peals of laughter, spraying her general area with lasagna, apparently finding her sister's comment highly amusing. Just get another job, Mom, Cora opined. It's not that simple, Cora. Look, I know this is difficult for you to understand now, but you will in the future. I was using the job as an excuse to stay away from my home, away from you guys. That's very, very wrong. Molly decided her girls deserved the truth. I was also staying away from the house because I didn't want to be reminded of your brother and your dad. The place is full of ghosts. Emma peered over her shoulder sheepishly. Molly couldn't help but laugh. Not real ghosts. I mean the memories. The memories? What about my friends? Molly was kind of hoping they would forget about that. I know, Mina. I feel your pain. No, you don't. Yes, I do. I moved away from my friends when I was your age because my dad worked in the army and we moved around a lot, and video calls didn't exist in those days. You only speak to your friends online these days anyway, so it's going to be no different wherever you are in the world. That's the beauty of the internet. And don't forget, you'll make new friends at school. Don't go there, Mom. You'll have 2 sets of friends, your new schoolmates and your online buddies. I don't care if you're online with your friends all evening, just as long as you get your homework and your chores done. Molly might come to regret that one, but she was clutching at straws. Mina wasn't giving too much away, but her silence was enough to go on for now. If Mina could just accept the situation, then Cora also would. Molly wasn't worried about Emma or Louis the cockatoo. I just need you to trust me, guys. I want to get away from the past. You cannot escape your past, answered Mina matter-of-factly. Surely you know that. I don't want to escape my past. I have beautiful memories too, but I do want to put distance between me and my past. I trust you, Mom. Molly, surprised by Cora's sudden change of heart, leapt up from the table and smothered her daughter in a hug. Thanks for understanding, sweetie. Molly turned to Mina. Trust me? Without looking at her mom, Mina nodded. Okay, on one condition, and that is, if it doesn't work out, we come back. Deal. Molly shook her daughter's hand as Mina added the caveat. 3 months. Molly snapped her hand away. We won't know anything in 3 months. 6 months? Following a long pause, Mina shook on it. Deal. Molly was over the moon. Yahoo! She swallowed the 2 of them in a hug. Emma jumped in to join them. Whenever hugs were going around, Emma was always there. The 4-year-old then asked, with a face of sincerity, What about Louis? Let's ask him, shall we? Molly called across to the cockatoo. Louis, you want to go on an adventure? The cockatoo looked through his bars, rose his head crest, and squawked a series of warbling clicks and caws. Molly declared, We'll take that as a yes. Emma and Cora clapped their hands with excitement and whooped for joy, though the bird could equally have been issuing a dire warning to the Greenes.